Very good evening, viewers. You're watching India Global with me, Gaurie, Dwivedi. Let's start the show with headlines this evening. India-UK resumed trade talks after a year-long pause. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says that the FTA will be win-win for both India and the UK. Sticking points remain even as a no deadline has been set for conclusion of talks. 3 years of the Russia-Ukraine war. Today, on third anniversary, Ukraine hosts European leaders as support from America fades. US versus Europe showdown over Ukraine looms at the United Nations. Miscreants launch attack on Bangladesh Air Force base. 1 killed and several have been injured in the attack on the Air Force base in Chittagong. Has law and order breakdown is now the new normal in Bangladesh. President Trump ramps up economic measures against China. Donald Trump targets China with new trade and investment cuts. A big Ndtv World exclusive with Google AI chief Pushmeet Kohli. DeepMind's Pushmeet Kohli talks about India's AI journey, says artificial intelligence will help unlock mysteries of nature and we need to leverage IT better. All right, viewers, we start the show with the big story today, which is the India-UK trade talks. It seems that the Trump impact has finally reached when it comes to trade ties across the world, and countries are now racing to forge trade pacts to try and reduce the impact that Trump tariffs could bring in. Well, India and UK, which have been going off and on in terms of their trade talks, have resumed those once again. This is, in fact, the first round of talks that are being held under Prime Minister Starmer's government. Previous talks included ones that took place under Rishi Sunak's tenure and his predecessor Johnson as well. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal and his UK counterpart met in Delhi today. They discussed ways to advance these talks. FTA negotiations, there have been certain sticking points that remain, and remains to be seen how soon can both sides iron out those. As I said, 12 rounds of discussions have been taking place. An agreement remains elusive. What are the sticking points? Well, whiskey remains one, and freeze and visa rules are also another key issue. Let's first listen in to what these trade ministers had to say. We come back and talk more on that.
Both Jonathan and I have agreed to resume free trade agreement negotiations in a very, very cordial atmosphere and with great trust between the two governments, which was reflected in the meeting this morning. We will be able to make rapid progress to meet the collective aspirations for trade, investment, and the mutual prosperity of the people of United Kingdom and India. Friends, we have decided to build upon the strong groundwork that 14 previous rounds had developed, a win-win for both our countries.
India is a vital partner for the UK. We are lucky to already have such a strong relationship with India, of course, underpinned by the living bridge between our countries, the 1.7 million people with Indian heritage who call the UK their home. Of course, what binds us together even further is our shared ambition through championing free and open trade and investment to drive jobs and growth across both of our countries.
All right, let's get in my colleague Mohammad Ghazali to fill us in with the latest in these trade talks. Ghazali, tell us what are the sticking points, where are these talks held, what are the prospects?
Yes, Gaurie. So Indian industry is seeking greater access for its skilled professionals from the IT, ITES and healthcare sectors in the UK, and they're also expecting zero customs duty on several goods. But meanwhile, the United Kingdom is pushing for lower import duties on products, as you mentioned, such as Scotch whisky, electric vehicles, chocolates and lamb meat. And it is also seeking greater opportunities in India's telecommunications, banking, insurance, legal and financial services sectors. Now today, Mr. Piyush Goyal as well as his UK counterpart, Mr. Jonathan Reynolds, were also asked about the mobility factor, the visa issue. And that is one sticking point on which both the ministers particularly said that perhaps in all the FTAs where India has signed FTAs with different countries, mobility or the visa is never covered under such FTAs. And he gave the example of Australia, that how India signed an FTA with Australia where students who are pursuing certain courses up to different levels, students pursuing diploma degrees in Australia are allowed work visas for a certain duration. Those pursuing masters or graduate degrees are allowed a certain duration of work visas. But this is not part of the FTA which India is discussing with UK. Piyush Goyal also mentioned that how India's investment in UK has created millions of jobs for the UK citizens there, and that is why in this particular FTA between India and UK, Piyush Goyal said that we will work with pace, but there won't be any haste. We won't take any decision in haste. There has not, both the ministers didn't divulge any kind of time frame, but both the ministers affirmed that perhaps after the 13th round of talks, which happened, the last round happened in 2023 in December, and after that in 2024, we had elections after which it was paused. Now both the ministers have confirmed that after resuming FTA, most of these issues will be ironed out with further discussion.
All right. Thanks much, Mohammad Ghazali, for bringing that latest information. In fact, viewers, before we get in our guest this evening, let's now understand why this FTA is so important and what does this mean for the Indian economy. The questions that I'll pose to the panelists as well on your screens. The first big question: how long do you think it will take when it comes to the FTA that's been in the works? Which are the sectors that stand to benefit the most, if at all an FTA does come? And the sticking point, the other key issue, what are those sticking points that round after round both sides are not being able to iron out? And is this a reflection of the times that the world is living in, which is that FTAs are going to be the need of the hour, given that Trump tariff threats are likely to remain and loom large over countries? All right, let's get in Gulzar Didwania, who's a partner and global trade advisory leader at Deloitte. And we also have Jasper Reed, who's an entrepreneur, joining me. Thank you so much, both of you gentlemen, for talking to me on what I think could really be extremely important in terms of how India approaches its trade policy going forward. Gulzar, let me start with you. In terms of, you saw the questions that we were posing in terms of why this is important. First of all, tell me the scope at which this will open up trade for India and UK if an FTA does go through.
I think let's put things into perspective. So first of all, try and see who is more going to be impacted with these FTAs. So India's exports are growing, India's export to UK are growing and imports are declining. And therefore, the trade surplus that India has is widening year on year basis. So based on the data published by the Ministry of Commerce, last year, financial year 23-24, India exported around $13 billion worth of merchandise and imported around $8.4 billion of merchandise. Similarly, the data from April to November 24 also suggests that India's exports period on period basis grew by over 15% to $9.6 billion, and imports again, reduced by 2% to $5.4 billion. So this trade deficit is widening, which means India is exporting more and importing less. And therefore, it becomes very, very important for the UK to not only, identify the key areas of, sticking points, but also see how do UK also starts increasing this, trade balance with India. So that's one driving factor which I think is very important for these bilateral talks to resume. Now, the 14th round, which happened in March 2024, some of these points like, India was asking access to the UK market from a services standpoint. UK was demanding lower duties on automobile, lower duties on, whiskey, etc.
Yes.
So those were the points which were actually.
Let's take them one by one. Let's take them one by one. Okay. So you are saying that India has a favorable trade relationship with the UK. How do we build on it? And of course, what does it mean from the UK's point of view? Jasper, you know, as an entrepreneur, you understand the importance of having favorable trade deals because, you know, you have access to markets and of course, your cost comes down. Explain to us from your point of view, from a business point of view, why trade deals, and especially the India-UK one, makes sense.
Hi, Gaurie. Well, I think the first thing I'd say is free trade agreements, which mainly deal with tariffs, are just one part of a much, much bigger picture. I mean, I'm a British entrepreneur who operates in India. I'm fully foreign funded. And so something like an FTA has very little impact on me because I'm overseas capital, I'm operating locally, I hire local people. A Scotch importer is obviously in a different boat. But the first thing I would say up front is that the amount of the parts of the overall pie that are dealt with on tariffs alone are relatively small, right? Having said that, a free trade agreement is a good signal of faith. It addresses a few areas. It can be built on. It may not have within it explicit protocols around visas or immigration, but all of these things are linked, right? So it's important. It's good to do. How important is it for both countries? That's a debate. I mean, I think at the moment, the last thing I'll make on this, that's a debate, right? So at the moment, both the UK and India are coming off 18 months of decline in consumer confidence, right? Both countries are suffering growth issues, albeit from very different vantage points, right? Both countries need to generate employment. And both countries, albeit very recently, are starting to kind of weigh up what Trump 2.0 means.
Exactly.
So who's got the greater priority? You can debate that. I think naturally enough, if you're India, great big markets like the EU and the US are naturally enough bigger priorities. But if you can get the UK agreement away, and it has been 13, 14 rounds, that's pretty good progress.
Okay. Mr. Dwivedi, what are the sticking points? You know, we've a lot of conversations have happened. You know, it's about the Scotch, it's about whiskey, it's about access to markets. What about visas? But explain to us the top two sticking points from the UK side and the top two sticking points from the India side that really become almost like a deal breaker.
I think let me start first with the UK side. So what we understand, the top two sticking points from UK side are a reduction in tariff on automobiles and the alcohol, which is whiskey to be very precise. Now, UK wants access because currently if you are importing whiskey, the customs duty is 150%. And therefore, it is actually making the UK whiskey pretty much, I would say, costlier if you are importing in India vis-a-vis the local manufacturers. So UK wants access to the Indian market for whiskey, which is growing very fast. So that's one sticking point. Second is reduction on customs duty on import of automobiles. While we have a different duty structure if you are importing parts of automobiles versus if you are importing a fully built automobile. So UK has been asking that give us an access to your market where you have lower customs duty tariffs for import of automobiles, particularly EVs.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are the two sticking points from a UK standpoint. India, I think, by and large, while as we see the merchandise trade surplus is much more when India is exporting more than importing.
Yes.
So India is wanting access to professionals market in UK, so that there should be liberalized visa rules, liberalized employment rules.
Indeed,
for
that's important.
Indian professionals.
Absolutely. For India, it's not just the goods, but the services, viewers, which is equally important. And our services trade is also very high, almost at par with goods trade, which is why access from a services point of view, which means our professionals can go there in these markets, is so important for us. Jasper, before I wrap this up, I have to ask you, there's this global sentiment that's there that, countries and businesses need to insulate themselves as much as possible from the Trump tariff threat, so to say. How do you see that impacting trade negotiations going forward?
I think it's just too early to judge, frankly, Gaurie. Whether what's going on at the moment is just the new US administration signaling, using their bargaining power, changing the conversation, or whether it turns into something. I think we have to wait and see. I mean, if you look at the UK-India bilateral relationship, I think the 13, 14 rounds, I don't think they'll be hugely affected at this stage by what's going on in the US. It might give a bit of an incentive to get things done before the world changes too much. But I would like to think at this stage of the game that, Gulzar, you pointed to a couple of items, but they ought to be, after 13, 14 rounds, down to a horse trade on the last few items. And then I think, frankly, it's like any negotiation. It's which party perceives themselves to have more leverage, who can wait the other one out a bit. Just briefly on the point about services, I think we'll talk about this another time, but the UK ultimately over the last couple of generations has become much more of a services economy than a product economy.
Indeed.
And making progress in banking, legal services, etc., onshore in India will be a top priority.
All right, Jasper Gulzar, thanks much for speaking to me on India Global. I guess the fact is that it is the third Prime Minister from the UK side who is taking the FTA talks forward. There is a global sentiment and a push factor that is making countries come together to thrash out a trade deal. It makes a lot of sense for the UK. The trade delegation is on record saying that who wouldn't want to be having a pact with the world's fourth largest economy. So there's everything going for it. Let's see how soon it happens. On that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back with more news on the other side. Stay with us. Now, as the world marks the 3 years of the Russia-Ukraine war, dozen leaders from Europe and Canada visited Ukraine's capital, Kiev, to mark the third anniversary of the country's war with Russia, in well show of support in solidarity with Kiev amidst a deepening uncertainty about the Trump administration's commitment when it comes to how it wants to address this issue. Along 3 years of Russia-Ukraine war, a lot seems to have changed, but what hasn't is the fact that there is now a peace momentum that has in fact developed. Take a look at some of these sound bites that have come in through the day.
Цей рік повинен стати роком початку реального надійного миру. Путін не подарує нам цей мир, не віддасть його в обмін на щось. Ми маємо здобути мир силою, мудрістю і єдністю, нашою з вами співпрацею. Про мир неможливо просто оголосити за одну годину, неможливо оголосити за один день сьогодні, завтра, післязавтра. На жаль, така реальність.
All right, turning focus now to the Trump administration's efforts to ramp up its actions against China, implementing a series of measures targeting investment, trade and other key areas, heightening concerns that tensions between the US and its top economic rival could in fact escalate. President Trump has issued a memorandum instructing a key government committee to limit Chinese investments in critical American sectors. That includes technology and energy. Remember, already there is a chip war that has been underway between the US and China. President Biden, in fact, most of his term he spent in upping the ante as far as ensuring that US can limit access of China to chips and other important technological areas. Well, the administration under Donald Trump is now urging Mexico to impose tariffs on Chinese imports, a move prompted by Chinese firms shifting production to the U.S.'s southern neighbor to bypass tariffs that have been imposed during President Trump's earlier term. The White House is also pushing for a review of the 1984 U.S.-China tax treaty and a reassessment of variable interest entities, a corporate structure that allows Chinese companies to list shares on U.S. stock exchanges. The Trump administration has argued that these steps are needed to protect key assets vital to American national security and economic independence. All right, turning attention back home in a move to promote India's tourism and soft power, Foreign Minister Jaishankar led a delegation of diplomats from 60 nations to Assam, where they visited the Sarnath archaeological site and Kaziranga National Park. The visit took place ahead of the Advantage Assam Summit, which will be held in Guwahati from the 25th of February. Prime Minister Modi will arrive in Guwahati today, in fact, in the evening, and witness the Mega More performance at the stadium in Sarusajai. Over 8,600 artists from 800 tea gardens across the state will perform this traditional dance, and the focus of the state government will be to highlight the peaceful atmosphere in the region so that countries which have travel advisory against the state are convinced to withdraw it. My colleague Ratnadeep Chaudhary gets you this report from there.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a two-day visit to Assam, where this evening he has witnessed the Jhumur dance performance by over 8,000 Jhumur dance performers from the tea gardens of Assam. The Jhumur is the main traditional dance of the tea tribe communities in Assam who live in the 800 plus tea gardens of Assam, and in this way Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with dignitaries, diplomats of several countries, union ministers, including Union External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, has been witness to celebrations of 200 years of the tea industry, the Assam tea, which is famous across the world, and the Jhumur dance, which used to be performed in the tea gardens for years together, finally got a stage. In fact, these people who work in the tea gardens are also important when it comes to the elections in Assam. And remember, the elections are in Assam are next year. However, Prime Minister would be also inaugurating Advantage Assam, Assam's Infrastructure and Investment Summit. This is the second edition of Advantage Assam, and this time, this business summit, this investment summit is going to be a mega event, given the fact that not only Prime Minister but several key ministers of the Modi government and some of the heads of state, also heads of missions of different countries in India, many countries, right from Bhutan, Thailand, Malaysia, United Kingdom, Australia, Singapore, and many others are partners to this event. And the state government is expecting a memorandum of understanding to be signed of more than 1 lakh crores. Also, this infrastructure and investment summit would look into not only promoting Assam as the next destination for semiconductor industry in the country, but also look at tourism, MSME, making Assam a destination for a defense corridor.
All right, on that note, we slip into a quick break. We come back on the other side with lots more. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching India Global with me, Gaurie Dwivedi. We now turn our attention to Bangladesh, where miscreants have launched an attack on the Air Force base in Bangladesh. This comes at a time when there's growing clamour that Mohammad Yunus's government seems to have not focused where it should, which is law and order. Remember, there's been a complete collapse of law and order as well as administrative machinery in Bangladesh in the last 6 months, ever since 5th of August, when the student revolution started. But since then, what Bangladesh has been focusing on is trying to, in fact, double down on its relationship with Pakistan, interestingly. So, as I said said, viewers, there are two things that are happening simultaneously. One, on your screens, you see those images that once again bring to light about law and order being under serious jeopardy in Bangladesh. And on the other side of the screen, you can see where the focus of Mohammad Yunus's government is, which is to forge ties with Pakistan, whether it is the defense ties or trade ties or cultural ties. And in fact, that's the big question that we are putting today on India Global in terms of the Bangladesh-Pakistan nexus. What is happening there? The first question that we are asking is, from trade to military, why there is a complete change, a complete 360-degree change in Bangladesh's ties with Pakistan. What does it mean? What's the approach suggesting? The second key question is that the military cooperation that Pakistan and Bangladesh are now doubling down on, what is the impact of this on India? And the third question that we are asking is, why have they suddenly elevated their ties? As I said, the focus should be on security. Focus should be on law and order. Why is the focus on elevating ties with Pakistan when it comes to Mohammad Yunus? And lastly, is Bangladesh looking to induct Pakistan's JF-17s? What does that mean for India? And how do we put these things into context? Let's get in our guest joining me this evening, Mohammad Kamruzan, who's joining me from Dhaka, and Ayanjit Sen from Delhi. Okay, let's quickly first get in Mohammad Kamruzan on what's really unfolding right now in Dhaka. Sir, there are two things, and both of them matter because they feed into the one larger story and trend that's happening in Bangladesh. On one end, you have what we're putting out on our screens, which is once again security and law and order in Bangladesh being under tremendous tension, even as the focus of the government lies elsewhere. Mr. Mohammed?
Yes, I can hear you. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
So, please tell your question.
Okay, my question is very simple, which is that why is there suddenly a huge focus on building ties with Pakistan, from defense to trade to culture to education? It's all about doubling down with partnership with Pakistan.
Actually, thank you very much for connecting me and for this question. Actually, you know that Bangladesh's foreign policy is friendship to all and malice to none. So Bangladesh is trying to establish this constitutional system, and not only with Pakistan, but you know that in the last couple of years, the defense cooperation between Bangladesh and Turkey has also extended, and with India, Bangladesh has a very deep relationship, though after the fall of Sheikh Hasina, there are some tensions, but it doesn't mean that suddenly the defense cooperation between Pakistan has been extended, but actually, after the fall of Sheikh Hasina, the warm relationship between Pakistan and
I'm going to read it
Bangladesh
out, sir.
has been visible.
Right.
Yes,
I am
please.
going to read it out, and then I'm going to get Ayanjit Sen also. What all has happened in 6 months? It's just a 6-month-old story since 5th of August, not yet 7 months. So I'm going to tell you whether it's trade, whether it's culture, whether it's education, whether it's military. 4 aspects. Okay, very quickly. Now, when you say what has happened in terms of cultural ties, suddenly you have Pakistani Qawwali singer actually performing twice in Dhaka. Then it comes to trade, there are 2 cargo ships at the Chittagong port that happened in November and December. Suddenly, it's just started out of the blue. Even though Pakistan hasn't formally apologized, by the way, for the genocide it conducted in Bangladesh. But that's something that the fight has to be done by Bangladeshis, not by anyone else. The bilateral trade between Pakistan and Bangladesh between August and December has increased by 27%, and both of them are trying to double down. The apex trade bodies of both of the countries have actually signed an MOU on the 13th of January to now start a joint business council. This was unheard of 6 months back. As I said, this is just the beginning of it. There were no direct flights, but now that isn't the case. There are direct flights going to be there. Bangladesh government has lifted all restrictions when it comes to security clearances for Pakistan. Pakistan has responded by waiving visa fees and security clearances there as well. Now, education, very interesting. Pakistan has decided to offer 300 fully funded scholarships to Bangladeshi students out of the blue. A country that hasn't apologized for the genocide it conducted on millions of Bangladeshi people are now offering scholarships to Bangladeshi students who want to study. I can go on, but there are military cooperations. And last, as I said, the JF-17 Thunder fighter jet. So there is suddenly a lot of interest between Pakistan and Bangladesh to come together. Ayanjit Sen, how do you put this together?
Thank you very much. You have read out details. Actually,
yeah, I'll get Ayanjit and I'm going to come back to you. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I think as far as the relations between Bangladesh and Pakistan is concerned, of course, it's a fallout of the fall of Hasina, no doubt. And more importantly, it's not just limited to only education, culture, defense, of course, has happened. And, there was a big unit of the Bangladesh Navy, which went down to Karachi a month or two back. And all this is nothing but a show of solidarity between the two countries. But remember, it's not the country in Bangladesh in question. Because at the end of the day, when the Pakistan High Commissioner based in Bangladesh can visit interior of a defense operative site in Bangladesh, that tells you the story where Bangladesh-Pakistan relations right now stand. Because there are pictures which have come out, there are videos which have come out, and these are very clear evidences to say with, to the extent that Pakistan has now, in a way, levied upon Bangladesh in whatever manner they can. And it's just to make sure that ties with India are never recovered. From that perspective, they are trying to do whatever they can as far as Pakistan.
Respond to that, Mohammed.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, you know that there is a very popular revolution, and even the students who took part in that revolution.
What has the revolution got to do with Pakistan-Bangladesh ties and the military drills?
Please let me say something. I'm finishing. So the demand of the students are also that they want Pakistan will formally apologize for the events in 1971 for genocide and other crimes against humanity. But the students and as well as the general people of Bangladesh also want that the normal business relationship, trade relationship will continue. And Bangladesh government, this government is also planning to discuss this issue with Pakistan. For example, Bangladesh is also tolerating for many decades border killings by India. So we are trying, Bangladeshi authorities are trying to make relationship.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to allow you any more airtime. I am not going to allow you any more airtime, sir. If you, in the same breath, talk about the genocide that Pakistan did on Bangladesh by any of the alleged border killings that may have happened on the India-Bangladesh border. As I said, if you're going to compare the two, I'm sorry, sir. As I said, I'm going to give you uninterrupted time, provided you don't misuse the platform by putting out what is incorrect.
People will decide.
Did you get an apology? Did you get an apology from Pakistan? Did you get an apology from Pakistan for the genocide? 53 years later, what you go and do is you want to accept scholarships from them.
Please, if you don't let me say something, then
no, I am not going to let you say. If you are going to misuse this platform,
people will decide. It's not your responsibility to decide.
No, I am saying you are misusing the platform by saying that the genocide that Pakistan conducted is the same as some of these alleged killings that you are saying. Are they the same?
I said that Bangladeshi people want apology from Pakistan.
So have you got one?
Under discussion, but it doesn't mean that
have you got one?
Will be no trade. It doesn't mean
have
that
you got
the
one?
Normal trade,
have you got an apology?
We are trying. It is on
no,
discussion.
You're getting scholarships. You take those. Ayanjit Sen, yes.
Why not?
Let's get an Ayanjit Sen. He hasn't been able to speak. Yes.
Border killings. We are tolerating border
yes.
killings.
Let's get an Ayanjit Sen. Yeah.
Yeah, scholarships. Giving scholarships to students of Bangladesh for Pakistan is the perfect example. And apart from that, there have been also incidents where the Bangladeshi players, players from different sporting disciplines have visited Pakistan. And remember, a time in Pakistan when Sheikh Hasina was ruling Bangladesh, at that point of time, the amount of inroads that Pakistan used to have in terms of business or any other form, there has been a subtle change all over. Can you just trample down millions of lives which were lost in 1971 and prior to that prior to the independence, and where the Pakistanis butchered the Bangladeshis left, right, center, killed, massacred, raped, everything happened. And the result is the government of, so-called interim government of Yunus goes ahead and makes all deals, whatever possible, to do with Pakistan.
Exactly.
In the assurance that Pakistan would be helping them in some way or the
Exactly.
other. But that's not going to happen at all, because things are going to change diplomatically and military-wise also. There would be some
Exactly. All right, I have to leave it there. And I'm hopeful. I'm going to give you another chance, Mohammad Kamarazon, maybe tomorrow, day after, provided you come with facts and we have a conversation that takes the story forward, not to misuse the platform. Thank you so much for joining me today. Well, bottom line, viewers, as far as this issue is concerned, is that Pakistan hasn't still apologized to Bangladesh for the genocide it committed in 1971 and prior to that. But what has happened under Muhammad Yunus's government is that all that has been forgotten, and there is now a concerted effort to mainstream Pakistan. In fact, ties between Pakistan and Bangladesh are now increasing at a never-before pace, whether it is trade, whether it is culture, whether it's education, whether it's military, in all aspects. Now, there is a push to come together and elevate their ties further with one common goal. You have extremists in Bangladesh that are now taking center stage, just like what happened in Pakistan a couple of decades back. India needs to keep its guard up, of course, but needs to see what is really happening. It's not just about military, it's about trade, education and culture. And that tells you what is really happening in Bangladesh in terms of the society, the changes in terms of radical Islamist elements coming to the fore. All right, shifting focus now to the other story that we are tracking well. It's the Global Investors Summit in Madhya Pradesh, where Prime Minister Modi was there. He was the chief guest. He inaugurated the summit in Bhopal and unveiled 18 policies of the government on industry, startups and much more. And during this event, he said the government will soon make Madhya Pradesh an investment hub, and said that India is in fact emerging as the top supply chain option for global aerospace firms. The two-day summit aims to showcase the state's vast investment potential and bring together global, domestic investors. Madhya Pradesh state government has invited entrepreneurs from 60 countries to explore investment opportunities that the state offers. Let's get in Saurabh Gupta joining us for more on this. Saurabh, you are in Bhopal. You've been talking to a bunch of investors from around the world. Talk to us. And in fact, let's play out this conversation that he had with Mr. Godrej a short while back.
The Global Investor Summit in Bhopal is underway. Joining me now, Mr. Nadir Godrej. Sir, the group obviously sees opportunities in India, and as one of India's oldest business houses, how does the Godrej Group view Madhya Pradesh?
Yeah. In Madhya Pradesh, our FMCG business had a very large factory in Malanpur for a substantial time. And at the last Madhya Pradesh summit, we had decided to expand that factory, and we got a lot of support from the Madhya Pradesh government. We have invested 450 crore, and later this year the factory will be commissioned, and we are hoping that the Chief Minister will come and inaugurate it. And as this is likely to be very successful, we'll make further investments later. Other businesses like Godrej Properties is doing a development in Indore. Godrej Agrovet is present over here, and Godrej Capital is also expanding to Madhya Pradesh.
All right, Saurabh's joining me for more on this. We played out a short conversation that you had with Mr. Godrej. Full of it is going to be available on our YouTube platform. Talk to us about how it's been like talking to global and domestic investors there.
Well, what many investors have pointed out is the vibrance of this summit, because many say that, the 18 policies that you spoke about, which were unveiled, is something that gave them a lot of clarity on the sectors that were available for investment, the sectors that they really viewed as, perfect investment spots. And that's something that all these industrialists have been talking about. The big doyens of industry were present, and, industry leaders spoke even But Prime Minister Modi also was here, and he kind of set the tone about Madhya Pradesh's future as an investment destination, and that's something that we've seen throughout the day as well, with several sessions and several memorandums of understandings between delegations of different countries that are attending this summit here.
All right, Saurabh, we leave it there. Really appreciate you joining us live from Bhopal on the Investor Summit. Well, on that note, viewers, before we slip into a break, on the other side, and let me tell you, there's an exclusive conversation with Google DeepMind Vice President Pushmeet Kohli, who talks about artificial intelligence and India's journey to become a major AI hub. A slice of that conversation after this very short break. I am in conversation with one of the world's foremost AI scientists, and some would even call him a rock star in the AI space, Pushmeet Kohli, who's Vice President of Google DeepMind. Thank you so much, Pushmeet, for speaking to me, taking out the time. Let me start by asking you that did you expect the conversations around AI to be that frequent, and not just in your innovation labs, but across, as I said, whether in boardrooms or even now in campuses, one hears the word AI more often than not?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I mean, the whole field of machine learning, as we used to call it, and AI definitely has had a whole transformation in the last 2 decades. I remember when I was starting my sort of research in this topic, it was very much a topic of deep mathematical research, and the conferences used to have 50 to 100 scientists coming together and sort of exchanging notes. It's definitely not the same scientific conference anymore. It has become quite mainstream, and for the right reasons. It is going to have impact on the world in various different ways. We are already seeing the potential it has to really advance and accelerate science that my team, particularly at Google, sort of has done a lot of work on. So yeah, it's exciting times.
Indeed. What got you into machine learning? As you said, 20 years back when you would have started, this was an area where probably, a few scientists would be working with. Most people, or laymen like me, and large part of our viewers, probably not really aware of, the contribution this could have or the impact down the line it could create.
Yeah, so I started working in this area mostly as an optimization researcher. I was interested in deep optimization problems that are encountered when you are trying to solve problems in computer vision and computer graphics and information retrieval. And what we realized is that this data-focused approach, where instead of programming the system to do something, if you allow the system to learn by itself from the data, it could come up with some very surprising sort of results which were much, much better than what you had programmed it for. So that whole paradigm of machine learning and sort of learning from data really brought home to me the fact that this is going to be a transformative technology and will unlock progress in a number of important problems that we are trying to solve.
Indeed. And before we come to the specifics in terms of, its impact on education or life sciences and, medical research, even areas like automobiles. Before we dive into any of that, I have to ask you, a larger big picture question, as someone who is an AI scientist, what is your goal in terms of, when you approach a technological breakthrough? What would you envisage AI to really achieve?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think where we definitely need AI for is to unlock some of the mysteries of nature, especially in science. In many areas of science, whether it's biology, whether it's chemistry, physics, we need deep breakthroughs. Our civilization is facing a number of sort of challenges. We saw it with the pandemic,
yes,
that our understanding of biology is quite limited. We are seeing it with climate change, that our understanding of the physical systems is limited. we are facing a huge energy crunch.
Yeah.
And we need new sources of sustainable energy. So if you look at all these different problems, what is underlying it is a need for deep technological and scientific breakthroughs. And I think this is where AI comes into the picture.
Why is that lingering fear there about, will this replace most jobs? I mean, and how does one address that lingering doubt about a tech breakthrough?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to think about the new generation of AI models is that they have cognitive abilities. They are able to solve cognitive tasks. Now, if you think about the history of technology, when calculators came out, right, there were people who used to do those very cumbersome mathematical sort of calculations, which now did not need to do them by hand, but could use calculators. So in the same way, there will be certain types of tasks and certain types of activities that these models will be able to do. And I think the right thing that we will need to do is basically figure out how should we leverage them, and then the productivity gains that we get, how do we then invest those productivity gains towards solving newer problems? So if there are people, if we have more time now because we are more productive and we have access to these tools, the thing that society needs to ask itself is to how do we take on that extra amount of productivity that we have, and where should we focus it?
Okay,
and the answer that I would like that I would propose is basically there are so many challenges that we are facing. In fact, we should be thinking about using any sort of our brain power that we can get towards those things.